Hi everybody, welcome to my case study. This is going to be on the Morse worm, and this is going to be by Darren. Alright, so in the introduction to the Morse case, so basically from the very beginning, crimes have always been committed in whichever era and time that it may be from. Whether it may be from a robbery or an assault, these things happen and will always happen on a daily basis. One of the more uncommon crimes that existed back then is that of cybercrimes, in which this consists of criminal activities that are done by the means of computer or the internet. Only until recently, 33 years ago, was the world's first cyber attack that began in a more modern era, which also set the stage for modern cybersecurity challenges. This was the introduction of the Morris worm that was created by Robert Tappan Morris, in which it infected and basically destroyed hundreds and thousands of computers during its release. The cybercrime falls under the typology of cyber trespass and the criminological theories of self-control and the techniques of neutralization, while also bringing in lessons of new methods to counter future viruses or worms. Alright, so moving on to the case summary. The United States v. Morris 1991 case began on December 4th, 1990, after the attack of the Morris worm that infected and damaged $200 to $53,000 worth of computer and networks. This began with a graduate student from Cornell named Robert Tappan Morris, in which he wanted to find a way to reveal the deficiency of the cybersecurities that were put up and that he had found as well. He then went and developed a program, or more specifically, a worm that would spread across national network of computers after being inserted at one computer location connected to the network, as mentioned within the US v. Morris 1991 case brief. In other words, though, it may act like a virus as it can infect computers and networks. However, its different is that worms do not attach themselves to its original operating system, but viruses do. Therefore, it is a lot harder to track down and terminate, especially after infecting so many different computer networks at a fast rate. With the intent to expose the security system's inadequacy, Morris created a program that was so great at its job in infecting one computer network to another that by the time he had tried to stop it, it was already too late. He was then found guilty and was sentenced to 3 years of probation, 400 hours of community service, a fine of 10,050, and the cost of his supervision after his violation of 18 USC 1030. Alright, and moving on to the typology relevant to the Morris worm case. Um, so the typology relevant would be cyber trespass. Trespassing onto it would be trespassing onto someone else's or private property on a computing network. More specifically, this is going to be a quote from Wong's article 2007, page 3. The breadth of the U.S. cyber trespass action points to a possible overlap between the trespass cause of action and notions of unauthorized access as a concept is utilized in computer misuse statutes. So basically, Morris wanted a program to breach security of school, which in order to show the integrity of the security that was set up for the cyber attacks. Um, and through this, he was able to gain unauthorized access and usage on school's computer, and not only that, but also being able to spread to other sites of computers, which included military, other university computers, and research medical facilities. In total, it added up to thousands of damages of dollars. And moving on to the criminological theories, here first we have the self-control theory. Basically, it mentions how he had multiple discussions between his peers about the integrity of the cybersecurity and how he could get through it. Basically, during that discussion, he shows arrogance and no regards to any sort of consequences that could happen when trying to penetrate and try to reveal the integrity of the cybersecurity that's set up. In Bossler et al. 2012 article, which mentions um, both low self-control and deviant peer associations have been linked to numerous forms of real-world crime and cybercrime. Alright, and then moving on lastly to the techniques of neutralization. Um, this is a quote from Chua and Holt 2016. The relationships between malware use and creations, however, deviate from the limited qualitative research which suggests that malware writers tend to blame corporations and end users for poor security. Basically, this supports the idea that Moore shifts the blame and justifications to the weak security that's been set up by the by the university. Alright, moving on to the collaborators. So here we have three. It's going to be from the FBI, New York Times, and the UC Berkeley, and the MIT team of programmers. So with the FBI, they basically investigated the whole situation on who sent the virus. They charged that person with the appropriate crime, as well as finding, as well as the estimation of damage, basically finding them. And then with the New York Times, they basically received an anonymous tip of who did it, basically being able to identify the person identity of who released the virus. And lastly with the UC Berkeley and the MIT team of programmers, their job basically was just to study the virus, observe it, as well as finding different ways to break it down in order to stop it and slow down the damage. And moving on to our lessons, in the Moraka et al. Article in 2019, it states, we start by formalizing a threat model for PDF malware detection inspired from previous work in the area of adversarial machine learning, and then we will use it to categorize existing and potentially new adversarial attacks against such systems. Basically, this is showing the potential for working against something similar to the Morse worm. You know, if anything in the future ever comes up again that is as dangerous as the Morse worm was. And on our second one, we have from Holzman 2017 in page 107. Everyone knew at the time that flaws such as buffers overruns were a potential problem, but not many people realized what the consequences of those flaws could be. Basically, this was a realization and a wake-up call that cybersecurity during that time, at the least, was not strong enough at all. And then lastly, during his Hafiz et al. Article 2007, since then, SunMail developers have addressed each new vulnerability by following the penetrate and patch paradigm. So this is basically being able to set up different programs in order to recognize certain virus slash worm programs that are malicious, and being able to penetrate them and break them down. Alright, and lastly, in our conclusion, Morris's actions and the crimes he committed are explained through and by the typologies of cyber trespass and the collaboration of different organizations with the lessons that comes with it as well. Um, one may perceive what Morris has done as something not criminal, rather as an accident or a necessary evil, as it basically gave the world a wake-up call that they needed to better their cybersecurities, in which they do, especially with how fast the internet and social media evolves every day. All right, thank you, folks.